Hello, everybody. My name is Jeff H. Malum, and welcome to the first actual lecture in the lecture series called British Literary Analysis, where we will have a look at British literature of all times, and we'll go into deep analysis on many examples from all the different times. While in the last lecture, that actually was quite a long time ago, I'm sorry it was in September, now it's November, the pauses in between, they will become shorter in the future. It was only this one time that it was almost 2 months, but it will be like 2 to 3 weeks at maximum in the future. Last time we only introduced ourselves to this topic while having a look at what we will want to achieve, and today we will actually start with some content. We will have a look at the British literary periods, and we'll hopefully have a brief overview of them after this lecture. And that leads me to the schedule for today. So at first we will start with a short recap of the last session. Then I will introduce you to the online course, which is some kind of optional collection of material for you that you can use. You don't have to, but there are many nice things there. I will introduce it to you in just a second. Then we will come to the British literary periods. I will give you a brief overview about of all of them, give you some characteristics and when they took place, but we will not yet go into detail of examples that we will analyze within the next couple of lectures, starting not next week, but next time. And then there will be some opportunity for interaction. So let's start right ahead. Now, as I said before in the last session, once again, I'm sorry, it was quite a while ago. If you haven't seen the introductory lesson, you should really do that now before watching this, because I will only give a brief overview of what we spoke about. And what is especially important about what we talked about is the goal of this course. So what will we achieve from it? And the conclusion to that was that we will have a look at certain texts, that is novels, poems, plays, and short stories of British literature. Focuses on Britain, Great Britain, the British Isles, not world literature. So we will not have a look at American literature, Australian literature, German literature, Japanese literature, whatever. It will only be literature of the British Isles. And we will have a look at them from three different perspectives. So we will have a look at the context and the historical background. We will have a look at the themes and content of these stories, and we will have a look at the form and style of these stories. And the goal is basically to, in the end, have at least 3 aspects of each for every text. So that means if we are, for example, looking at, J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter, then in the end we will know at least 9 things about it, 3 about context, historical background, 3 about themes and content, and 3 about form and style. Now, this will not be on school level, but more like advanced level. And also, I want you to take away at least 3 of each, so 9 aspects about every text, but we will definitely speak about more. So it will not just be that limited. That is very important to say. But in the end, and this is where I will speak about the online course in a minute, I will give you optional, of course, opportunities to test your knowledge. So for you, I will create some kinds of mock exams and worksheets, stuff like that, that you can do, but you don't have to, and they will be right there. So let's talk about that now. By the way, before talking about the online course, I briefly want to mention that I'm sorry about that both the audio quality and the video quality, everything with the lighting and stuff is not yet perfect. I'm still working on that. I'm also new to this kind of lecturing online, so yeah, please excuse that not everything is perfect, but I'm working on it, and I'm also very, very open to feedback, so please use, for example, the comment section below to give me some feedback and make suggestions or ask questions or whatever. Now, about the online course. First of all, you can find it in the description. It's a link in the video description, or if you can't access the video description, it is at jeffmalum.com/belit_lecture. So there is no capital letter there, so all these things are L's. And it's basically, yeah, my homepage /British B literature lit_lecture. You can find it there, but as I said before, the link is also in the video description. Now, the online course is, how should I explain it? It's some kind of learning platform for you to use your own way. If you've ever been enrolled to a university, a college, then you are probably familiar to systems like Moodle, for example, and this is a little similar. So you can enroll into that course. There is a password. The password, by the way, is JHM in capital letters _BL, capital letters, IT, small, 21. The password is also in the video description. Don't worry about that. And once you enroll there, you have access to all the material that I give you there. Now, first of all, in this online course, you can find all these videos. So every time a lecture is finished, you can find a link to the video there. It's also embedded there. And what is most important is that all these lectures also have a script. So, so to say, a PowerPoint presentation in PDF version, which you can access. And yeah, I really recommend that you have a look at these scripts while watching the lecture, because if you want, of course, all of this is optional, you can make notes there. And it is basically a better version of that. So this is just for the video, but I decided not to include these presentations directly into the video because I'm a fan of, you know, having this and writing down instead of just showing you slides that are already finished. But yeah, they are there. You can use them, and it's very recommended to take notes there if you feel like taking notes. Maybe it's not too important today and last time, but starting with the next lecture, it definitely is recommended, but not necessary. As I said before, this is all optional. Now, this course also offers texts and further literature, so links to, for example, shops where you can buy other literature, or to online resources that are free, all giving you additional information, additional material on the topics we're dealing with. And sometimes I also include other videos. So for example, when we will talk about Old English and Middle English, which sounded a lot different from what we know as English, especially British English today, I will also include some material for you so that you can, yeah, get a glimpse of how that sounded like, how that works when being spoken out, while I might not be able to present this in these lecture videos here. But yeah, so I really, really, really recommend having a look at these courses. There's also, and this is what this little thing is, once you enroll to the course, so once you opened the link and typed in the password, you will have access to the course. And right on top, right at the top of it, so underneath the syllabus, but very far above, there is a yellow symbol with a musical note on it. And if you click on the text next to it, there will be an audio file and another presentation, very short presentation, that gives you a brief introduction, a tutorial on how this course works, because there are many different functions, many different symbols, and they might not be too transparent for you when you have your first look at it, perhaps. So the yellow symbol, this is where you get a tutorial on how to use this lecture course. Now, enough about that. Oh, just one word. As I said before, I will, in the end of this whole lecture series, provide some material for you where you can test your knowledge. I will create it myself and bring it right to you. Now, of course, I will not introduce all of this into the lecture videos, but this online course is also where you can find these materials. So after each lecture, just have a look at it. And it will also provide some material for the next lecture. So for example, you can already find the text we are dealing with in the next lecture there. So you can have a look at it if you want before watching the next lecture. My door is ringing, just a second. Okay, so much about the recap in the online course. I'm very sorry about the long introduction. It won't be like that in the future sessions. But yeah, now let's start with the actual topic for today, which is the British literary periods. And this is for, obviously, you can see it started somewhere and, well, has not yet ended, still ongoing, obviously. Literature is not dead yet, even though sometimes people say the book as a medium is dead. But yeah, that's not true at all. And also, books is not the only kind of literature. However, we will talk about that again, the literature medium. Now, let's start where it basically all started, at least in the British context. Of course, we can say that even before British context, there was literature somewhere else. There were obviously human beings for a long time, and they also had literature. But for the British context, the context of the British Isles, we start round about the 5th century with the period of Old English literature. Now, while we can't really say when exactly literature started on the British Isles, there was somebody called the Venerable Bede. I will most likely talk about him again in the Old English lectures. And he once stated that British Old English literature started in 485, I think. So this is where most people, especially in English studies also start having a look at British literature. It went until 1066, and we'll talk about that year again in a second, and includes, well, authors, so to say, such as Catman, and also lots of anonymous authors we don't know the names of today. For example, the author of Beowulf, a story that we will definitely have a look at. Now, the thing about Old English literature is that writing as we know it today was not yet possible. There was no printing culture, there were no pens, no computers such as that. So literature was mostly oral culture. So the texts that were created, the stories people told each other, were only transmitted, orally. So, for example, somebody was staying on the streets and just telling a story, and somebody heard it and memorized it and told it again somewhere else, and then maybe just a couple of hundreds of years later, somebody was actually writing them down, which is why we cannot really say that, for example, when we have a look at Beowulf, that this Beowulf that we know today was the original Beowulf, because it's pretty easy to say that it was most likely very, very different at the start, and also one could never really say who exactly it was who originally came up with that idea. Now, there are some exceptions where you can tell that, both when they emerged and who exactly came up with that, but that, especially in Old English context, is, I would say, a rarity. Well, general topics of that time, when the Angles and the Saxons ruled over the British Isles, is mostly mythological and religious context. We have, such as Beowulf, again, we have many heroic tales. And yeah, that is basically the character of Old English literature, which changed in 1066 when the Battle of Hastings was, and basically the Normans conquested England, or Great Britain, which was not yet Great Britain then. And with that, there came many changes, including in literature. Now, as you just realized, we will only have a brief look at all these periods now, but we will go into more detail in the respective lectures. So, after Old English literature, the period of Middle English literature started, which is also how the language spoken at that time is called. I will try to read out some some Middle English when we arrive at these lectures, but it's not very good. So the Middle English literature period started in 1066 with the Norman conquest and ended in 1485, roughly when the Tudor family reigned over the British Isles. Now, the major difference between Old English and Middle English literature is that now writing was also a thing. So even though it was rarely the actual authors that wrote down their own stories, as we know it today and in later literature periods, back then it was mostly scribes. So for example, not only, but for example, monks who were paid to write down books, while most of the other people couldn't write yet. But it was a thing, even though it was very, very expensive, so it was still some kind of a rarity, but it was not only oral culture anymore. Also, unlike Old English literature, Middle English literature was also the start of secular stories. So that means, while in Old English literature all of these stories had some connection to religion or mythology, now there were also non-religious stories and tales. So a huge step towards what we know today as literature. It was then the start of the Renaissance literature, a term that probably everybody has heard before, because Renaissance is a thing that was important in many, many contexts around the world. So, for example, also in America and in Germany, for example, there's also the Renaissance epoche. But the Renaissance literature in Great Britain, or in British Isles, brought some of the most notable authors of all time, such as William Shakespeare, John Donne, and John Milton. It was when my camera was overheating. Okay, my camera overheating was obviously not part of the plan. Now, what I wanted to say, the Renaissance literature was, as I said before, when the Tudor period also started, including Henry the Seventh and the Eighth, and Queen Elizabeth the First. And the name Renaissance already gives away that it was some kind of rebirth of classical elements that people were again very interested in, and yeah, it was also it's oftenly called like the golden age of England, and had lots of support for the arts, also from the political level. And yeah, as I said before, Shakespeare, Don Milton, many people that are very important in their influence on literature until today. Now, the Renaissance literature can be separated again into different Renaissance periods, so to say, because it differed in between, like early versus high and late Renaissance. But we will talk about that in more detail when we speak about these periods in the respective lectures. Then, just to give you some more historical background information, a civil war broke out in England, which eventually led to there being no monarchy at all anymore, which is quite interesting because I think that was the only time in the whole British history that there was no monarchy. Even today, there is still a queen there, you know. I hope you know. Yeah, and then the Civil War broke out, and there was a Lord Protector instead. But then afterwards, after the Civil War, the monarchy was restored, and this is also where the term of the next period derives from, which is called the period of restoration and enlightenment. So yeah, as I said before, the monarchy was restored, and during that period there was some, yeah, as also the name gives away, enlightenment in society. So people became more and more interested in realism and in science, and this is what you can also find in the literature of that time. Yeah, and you will definitely, when you read through many of the texts of that time, see that there was some kind of skepticism, and not really towards something specific, so not just towards politics and religious, but you know, some skepticism, some general skepticism towards basically everything, which is also why the genre of satire was a big thing, and I think it first emerged during that time. Now, names you might know as authors from that time are, for example, Daniel Defoe or Alexander Pope, or maybe you've heard of Oliver Goldsmith. Yeah, it's actually a period that oftenly, especially when English is taught as a subject in school, is a topic that has quite less importance, also because it is very political in some aspects. But nevertheless, I think it is very important, so there will be some lectures about it, and I will also tell you then why I think it should not be overlooked at all. But let's continue to something that definitely everyone has heard about. Starting around the events eventually leading to the French Revolution, obviously in France, not on the British Isles, but you know, there were lots of political connections also in society, in the mindsets of people. Around that period, there was the start of the Romantic period, and I think everybody has heard before of Romanticism as a literature period, even if you are not that, you know, if you don't have huge knowledge about British literature, I think you probably heard about that. And this is because it is a very, very unique period where everything at first seems so very, very positive, especially towards humanity and the individuals, because people in romantic literature, they really celebrate the individual. They celebrate the imagination, which is also why supernatural things are a big theme of romantic literature. And not only do they celebrate themselves as individuals, they also celebrate nature a lot and love a lot, emotions. And yeah, there was also, especially on the American side, the, so to say, the other side of the coin, which you might have heard about, called Gothic, which is also very celebrating humanity, but rather celebrating what's bad about humanity. However, we will not talk about this in the British context. We will talk about that in the American context because it was more present there. But yeah, when we will talk about Romanticism, we will talk about authors like Jane Austen, John Keats, but also Mary Shelley. These themes in literature were a big thing, the major thing during that period. But this all changed in 1832 when Queen Victoria took the reign over the British Empire. I would say that the Victorian period, or Victorianism, how it's often called, is my personal favorite period of British literature. Mainly because some stories, like for example Sherlock Holmes, have come into existence in that time. The Victorian period, as you might realize when looking at the time span, focuses a lot on progress, because during that time there was a lot of progress going on in the entire world, especially in the British Empire, because of, you might have guessed it, industrialization. So everything changed, and also the arts were very progressive in that way. So all these stories are affected by this huge progress there was by industrialization, and also how this all strengthened the class system. You will see when we have a look at texts, for example, like Oliver Twist, that social structure was a huge thing for British people back then. And you can see this emphasis on structuring society very harshly in the text that we will deal with. We are getting closer to the end of this overview, but those few things that are left are still very, very important. Because first of all, there is this time between World War I and World War II. You might realize where we have arrived around World War I, right? And the period between the First and the Second World War is usually referred to as modernism, or modern literature, or modernist literature. And the First World War had huge impact on the British Empire. Some people would also say that for the British Empire, the First World War was even a bigger impact than the Second World War. And in literature, you can see how disoriented people were during that time, how puzzled they were by this huge war and all the changes that came with it, especially due to financial reasons. Now, what does this really mean for literature during that period? That is especially a form of experimentation. So people in modern literature, or modernist literature, they broke lots of rules that were there before. They tried new things, lots of new things, and thereby also reflecting the desorientation that was a big thing in society. Now, this part, this picture, looks basically complete now, but of course it isn't, because this ends with with the end of Second World War, and now we can't just say, okay, and after that there is today. Yeah, not really a period, just today. No, last but not least is today, or everything after modernism. It's a little harder to speak about that, because there are, so to say, more tinier periods, and one cannot really say when which started and which ended, and which of them is still ongoing. How do we call today? Now, terms that will occur when we arrive there are terms like post-war literature, post-modernism, that is going strictly against modernism, and we will hear contemporary literature. There are also other terms one could use and one could argue about, but we will argue about that then, because it's so different and so complicated to actually define that period, and especially where are we today. So this is why, last but not least, it's a very interesting topic, but we cannot cover all of that in this brief overview of this first lecture. Now, perhaps you in school have learned some other terms, or when you were in university or wherever. Maybe you've heard, instead of Renaissance literature, maybe you've heard early modern literature, or maybe you know the term neoclassic, or Georgian, or Edwardian. There are many other terms that I have not included here. And that is very important to say, that there are different perspectives on how to define these terms. And this is the definition that I have chosen, and that I personally think is great, and the one we will be working with. And however, I will make some discourses on, for example, why do I call it like that and not neoclassical, or not Edwardian, and why does my Victorian period not stop at 1901 with the death of Queen Victoria, but goes on until World War One. And we will speak about that in the respective lectures. You also, that is very important, in the online course you have a PDF file called Overview over the British Literary Periods. That is a PDF file that currently only holds the information that I've given you today, so basically just the name and the time span. But the further we get, so the more lectures of this lecture series will be uploaded, this file will always get updated as well. So I will introduce and include these information that we cover over time in there. It is in this lecture, so it is under the headline November 2nd. You will find it there, and it will be updated regularly. Okay, so much about the overview of the British literary periods. Of course, you now only have a brief idea of what we will be dealing with. My idea was not to give you full knowledge about it today. That's what the respective lectures will be about. So how are we going to proceed? First of all, some interaction. After today, and I'm sorry, today was not very professional. There were many cuts, many lighting problems, many interruptions, some problems. I will try to fix that. I'm still working on a good schedule also for filming. Now, if you have any questions, if you have any suggestions, any wishes, any comments, whatever, please feel free to add them either in the comment section under this video, or if you go to the online course, there are several options right on top of the course where you can find some possibilities to either interact with each other, so other participants of the course, so to say, or with me directly, either publicly or privately. There are many different options for that. So I really suggest go to the online course if you have questions or wishes. And I really encourage you, if you have questions or wishes, please feel free to contact me. I'm really putting lots of effort and lots of work into this whole lecture thing. So please go ahead. I'm ready to answer any question. I'm happy to fulfill any wish and whatever. I just have to know, so please just let me know. Before I will give you a short teaser on what's coming next, I just wanted to tell you real quick, you know I'm doing this all for free, and I do not expect anyone of you to pay this. The whole course, the online course, is for free, the lecture videos are for free, and I will provide you with lots of material, either self-created or send you to material on the internet or to shops where you can buy actual books, for example. And for some books, I'm currently working on getting some shared licenses so that I can actually share some parts of novels with you, not whole novels, but parts of them, so we can work with them. But I'm still working on that. If you still want to support me, you know, this is not obligatory, completely optional. I have a Patreon account called Jeff H. Malum. It's also in the video description or on the online course. You can find it there as well. Just every tiny support is very helpful. But as I said before, it's optional, not obligatory. It's up to you. But I'm extremely thankful if you decide for that. Because, yeah, lots of effort, lots of work for free, so to say. Now, what is next? We have started last time with an introduction. I told you how we will proceed, and now I'll give you an overview, a little more in detail about what we will be dealing with. And all of these we will deal with now chronologically. So we will start here in Old English Literature, and this is over here. Next topic. I'm planning to upload the next lecture on November 23rd in 2021, and it will be the first lecture on Old English Literature. In that lecture, we will deal with historical context, so we will have a more, a closer look on the history of Old English, but it will not be too detailed, just what is really important for Old English literature, so I will not provide you with the whole history of the 5th to 10th or 11th century. Don't worry about that. Just what is really important, especially for the texts that we are dealing with, giving you an overview. And then we will speak about Beowulf by an anonymous author. We don't know who originally came up with that. And we will talk about that in detail. So we will do our first literary analysis, or actually, since it's a lecture, I will do that, you can listen. Now, what do I want from you? What do I expect from you? What do I wish? And what do you don't have to do? As I said before, that's the online course. In the online course, you can now already have a look at Beowulf. I have provided the original Beowulf in Old English for you, which you probably won't understand. Neither do I. And a rather professional translation of Beowulf into modern day English that you might be able to understand. You can read it. It's not too long, or you can read excerpts of it, just whatever you want. Because, when we start next lecture, of course I will give you lots of details. I will do the literary analysis for you. But I will not, not give you the whole content. I cannot, it would take hours if especially when we will be talking about novels later. I cannot, tell you everything. So you can watch the next lecture and all the others to come completely if you haven't read the text. But I always recommend that you do. Just so that it's easier for you to follow. But you don't have to, as I said before. You can try it out yourself how you wish. But Beowulf is available for free in the internet, and I have provided the links to these texts in the online course. Video description below. There is a better translation of Beowulf available, but it's not available for free. I have also provided you with the link for that. You can buy it if you want, but as I said before, it's not obligatory. You can also work with the other translation that is not by Seamus Heaney that I've provided in the online course. Okay, so much about that. So we have talked about the introduction, the online course, the literary periods. Don't worry, you don't have to write all of this down. It's in the script in the online course. It's as a PDF. It's there. Don't worry. This is the password again for the lecture course. And next time we will go into detail with literary analysis, starting on Old English literature, with the example of Beowulf. That's it from my side. Once again, please, interaction. If you have questions, wishes, suggestions, critics, whatever, just type it in the comment section or send me an email or whatever. Use the options there are. Thank you very much for listening, for watching this. I'm very looking forward to the next session because it's the first literary analysis. And yeah, my name is Jeff H. Malum, and read you all soon.